We are doing Extra Life again this year, where you can mash buttons, roll dice, play games, and help kids along the way. I hope you'll be a part of that with us. Stick around after the video for more information. Hey guys, Peter Franson here from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. I wanted to take a little bit of time and just talk about some of the news that came out this week that triggered a number of different thoughts in me, specifically the news that Microsoft is buying Zenimax, the parent company of Bethesda. This is huge. I don't know if there's ever been an acquisition like this by Microsoft or Sony or even in the games industry in general. It's massive. To give a little bit of perspective, at least a couple other commentators that I watch made this observation, which was really striking to me. They bought Zenimax, Microsoft, for $7.5 billion. Now, we might not have any frame of reference. What the crap? That's at some point, money just gets to be insane amounts, and it doesn't mean anything to us. Okay, well, Disney paid about half that for Star Wars. For Star Wars, they paid roughly half of that amount. So that really says something about not just Microsoft's eagerness, but also I think the value of Bethesda, the nature of video games today. I mean, I for one, and I'm sure I'm not alone in this, as much as Star Wars is celebrated, I am a lot more excited about the prospect of a new Bethesda open-world RPG than I am at another season of The Mandalorian or another Star Wars movie or another Star Wars video game. I would much rather have Bethesda's next open-world RPG. And a lot of people would say the same thing of some of their other properties. Let's go through them, actually. Those properties, the big ones anyway, include Wolfenstein, Prey, Dishonored. A bigger one would be Doom, the upcoming Starfield open world space exploration RPG from Bethesda, the Fallout series of games, and the Elder Scrolls franchise. So this is huge. Now, Microsoft also already owns In Exile, which that studio is responsible for the Wasteland series of RPGs and the Bard's Tale RPGs, which recently had kind of a revival. Well, both of those franchises recently, but particular to me, the Bard's Tale was one of my favorite games of last year. So that was a really significant purchase to me. And they already have purchased Obsidian as well, an even more significant purchase to me than In Exile. Obsidian is working on Avowed, which is the very Elder Scrolls-like looking first-person RPG based in their Pillars of Eternity universe. And of course, they also have made the Pillars of Eternity games, which the first game in that series, one of my favorite games of all time. And recently also The Outer Worlds, which was their take on kind of a Fallout Systems type of first-person sci-fi RPG, but set out in space instead of in a post-apocalyptic world. These are the games that have come out. Really great games. Avowed looks very promising. This is a developer that already was an exciting get for them. But now they own Obsidian, In Exile, and stunningly, Bethesda. They basically dominate the Western RPG video game market now. Aside from them, the only ones that I can think of that would be worth mentioning on that level would be CD Projekt Red, of course, with the upcoming Cyberpunk 2077, and also the Witcher series they're known for, and BioWare, who is certainly dipped in terms of what fans have come to expect from them. They've disappointed in recent years. They've disappointed for, I think, a while, steadily since the original Dragon Age came out. Their games have been met, their RPGs have been met with mixed results. I was going to say, well, maybe not Mass Effect. Well, I guess even Mass Effect 3, had a rough ending. But all that to say, they're certainly not at their best now. So what Microsoft has here in these properties is really, really worth mentioning. One thing that fans have already been commenting on is whether or not there will be a Fallout New Vegas 2. There's been lots of hype about that. That was a widely celebrated game, possibly the most celebrated of all games in the Fallout franchise. I do not join that chorus of saying, oh man, I really want a Fallout New Vegas 2, because I love what Obsidian has been doing. The reason that fans, if you don't know, are saying that is because Obsidian, back in the day, made, as kind of an outsourced entity for Bethesda, they made Fallout New Vegas. Building on the engine and the gameplay that Bethesda had already established with Fallout 3. I don't want them to do that again. I really think that The Outer Worlds was a fantastic game, and I would like to see a sequel that is even more open and big and stuff, and really leans into that big Fallout world kind of experience even more. I don't need them to do more Fallout. I think having another Outer Worlds game alongside a potential future Fallout game is much better scenario. I want that kind of variety, especially since Microsoft now owns both. I don't think fans are ultimately going to want them to just focus on Fallout and Elder Scrolls, which brings me to Avowed. Yeah, neither would I want Obsidian now to be working on what I have called for years a potential Skyrim New Vegas, where they would make an Elder Scrolls game as a third party for Bethesda. I don't want that anymore. Seeing Avowed, realizing, oh, that's going to be in the Pillars of Eternity world, great. I want another game that's going to be like an Elder Scrolls game, but it's going to be in an original world. That I'm totally content with that, and I think in the long run, that's going to satisfy gamers more as well, to have variety, and both of these teams working on their individual things that have a lot in common, but still have some great variety there. There's been such a big vacuum in the type of games that Bethesda makes ever since Fallout 4 came and went. And no one else has really been picking up that slack, except for more recently Obsidian with the Outer Worlds and the upcoming Avowed. So anyway, yeah, I think that's great. The big question that's been asked, and I think answered to a degree as well, is are these games from Bethesda going to be exclusive to Xbox consoles and PC? Are they going to keep these games away from Sony in particular and Nintendo as well? And what Phil Spencer, the head of Xbox, has said is that the upcoming games, Ghostwire Tokyo and Deathloop, which are Bethesda titles that are planned exclusives for the PlayStation 4, or maybe it's PlayStation 5. Anyway, they're planned PlayStation exclusives. They're, if they weren't announced to be so already, they are going to be timed exclusives. They said that they're going to honor that timed exclusive agreement. So that's going to be kind of interesting to see Xbox basically putting out exclusives for Sony for any length of time. But what he said after that is that future games, as far as what platforms they end up on, will be handled on a case-by-case basis. Now, he could very easily be saying that because all of this was announced just before pre-orders went live for the new Xbox consoles, and so it would be to their advantage for the immediate future in selling Xbox consoles to maybe allow gamers to believe that these games will be exclusive to Xbox consoles. That's going to motivate more console purchases right now. But I think that it is much more likely that a number of these games, if not all of them, will continue in the vein that Microsoft has been in for a while, of saying we're not focused, basically not being focused on exclusives. There have been statements put out recently since this announcement, also by Todd Howard, the head of Bethesda, that really emphasize the desire to create games with Microsoft, talking about how this is a unified thing they have in common, wanting to make games for everybody no matter what they're playing on. And so I think that language like that continuing even after this announcement says to me that in all likelihood, they're going to continue putting many of these games, if not all of them, on multiple platforms. I think that also makes the most business sense, similar to how they didn't suddenly, after getting Minecraft, say, okay, now you got to buy an Xbox or a PC if you want to play Minecraft. No, they continued to put it on PlayStation 4. I think they even continued supporting it there, at least for a while, but and maybe it's still being supported there, I'm not sure. Anyway, I think with games at that level, it just doesn't make sense to gamble that it's going to be worth it in the long run to limit them to a console for the sake of selling consoles. That just has not seemed to be their focus. What their focus has been is Game Pass. And so they've announced that all these games are going to be coming to Game Pass, and that's really been the service, the platform that they've been pushing and pushing and pushing. And so I think that this is largely about that, in addition to the money they'll make from selling it on various platforms. I think it's also likely that these games, some or all of them, will either be timed exclusives, maybe just for a month or two, who knows, maybe as much as a year, or they'll have exclusive features of some kind. I remember when Fallout 4 was announced to have mods, that was a big deal. And the modding situation, there's more freedom for it on Xbox than there is on the PlayStation 4. And that's been a disappointing thing, but something that's, for me as a PlayStation 4 owner who doesn't have an Xbox One, but it's certainly noteworthy and maybe could have been an indication of this possibility in the future, given the companies seeing eye to eye more and just having done business together for longer. Anyway, so yeah, I think that we're probably looking at timed exclusives or exclusive features of some kind. But wow, this announcement really blows out of the water the Final Fantasy XVI exclusivity announcement from Sony during their presentation. I mean, maybe 10 years ago, that would have been a cool thing for me to be like, oh my gosh, well, I have to get a PlayStation now. But really, I've lost interest in the Final Fantasy games with all the changes they've made, and in a number of Japanese RPGs in general. I've increasingly been interested in Western RPGs ever since I got an Xbox 360 and started experiencing more and more of them. Now, in addition to the possibility of traditional timed exclusives, they could also leverage Game Pass and say, hey, you can get Starfield, the next Bethesda RPG. You can get Elder Scrolls 6. You can play it 1 month early or 2 months early if you subscribe to Game Pass. That was a suggestion made by another commentator, and I think that makes a lot of sense that we will see Microsoft doing that at some point in the next this upcoming generation. So. And as much as Game Pass has been celebrated, I mentioned this last week when I was talking about the Xbox versus PS5 kind of topic a bit. Really, I still don't see commentators talking about the downside, the very significant downside of Game Pass, and that is that games are not necessarily there forever. First-party games, maybe, although I'm not even sure if that's the case. But third-party games are certainly not going to be there in perpetuity. They go in and out, like movies and shows on Netflix and Amazon Prime. So I think that probably the reason that a lot of commentators aren't talking about it is because they are in the games industry to a degree, well, in part because they are interested in all kinds of different games, and maybe they're doing nothing but playing games, and they're not particular about what kinds of games they want to spend their time playing. But for a person like me, who is very passionate in my enjoyment of video games, but I do not have as broad of an interest in all kinds of different games, I am more and more particular. The more games are being produced, the more games that are available, the more I've been able over the years to be more and more particular about what I really want to spend my time playing, even as to some degree my interest did broaden out after getting an Xbox 360 during that generation. Even so, my interests are particular enough that the idea of getting Game Pass does not appeal to me, because especially if I'm playing multiple games at once, I might be forced to finish up a game really quick because they announce, as I just read an announcement from Xbox the other day, that like, hey, if you want to play such and such a games, they're going to be riding off into the sunset, so now's the time to wrap up your time. They, try to put a positive spin on it, and like use funny little phrases like riding off into the sunset. They're going away. We're losing these games on Game Pass. And they said, of course, you can also get it with a 20% discount. You can buy it outright for, a 20% discount. And it's just not for me. It's just not for me. It's would be a waste of my money. I would much rather be a bargain hunter and wait a little bit for games to go on sale, and then have them and be able to play them at my own pace. Come back to them years later if I want to play them again. I want those options, So, but I think that Xbox, the Game Pass service, for me in particular, does have some appeal as a reviewer, as someone that recently, back in January, lost the ability to review games through Redbox because Redbox doesn't rent them out anymore, and so I've had to figure out other ways. How am I going to do this in a cost-effective manner? And I have to say that at least for the first-party Xbox games, which come at launch to Game Pass whenever they are released, that will be a very viable option for, $10 to just jump on. It'll be more than a Redbox rental, but it'll be a lot less than buying the game and then reselling it just so that I can review it. So I think for people that are reviewing games, or people that just want to sample games a lot of different kinds of games, and use Game Pass more as, view it as a kind of an intermittent rental service that they subscribe to every now and then to see what kind of games are available and what they might enjoy playing. I think that maybe has some value there, but not as an ongoing subscription for me, and I think a lot of gamers that are like me. So with all the hype about Xbox and Game Pass and stuff, I wanted to be sure and mention that again, because I just don't hear anybody pointing out that fact, that these games come and go, and you really should be aware of that before you jump on board the Game Pass bandwagon. So as far as my current plans, I also wanted to share just my personal deliberations about Xbox versus PlayStation, and which one I'm going to get in the coming generation. As I've said before, I am likely going to get both, and this change, as I really tossed it over in my mind back and forth, really confirmed that yes, I am definitely going to be getting both at some point. That is really a first for me. I have never been one that has had the money or the interest in getting both consoles. I have been saving money for years now for the upcoming console generation, and dropping comic books, at least buying them as they get published on the stands. It was probably the biggest money-saving thing I ever did as a geek, and so I have been diligently saving for years. And also, I recently finished my weekly Waistline endeavor, which is a whole thing I've been doing for a year on the Christian Geek Central podcast, chronicling my weight loss endeavor. And that I've just finished up, and so the money that we set aside as kind of a reward for me, my wife and I now have access to. And so I'm actually going to be able to buy both consoles if I wanted to within the first probably 9 months of their release. And the other thing that is kind of interesting is I think about getting both consoles. Normally, I would never, in past generations, buy a console at launch because I want all the hardware problems to get worked out of them. They're going to go bad, or they're going to wear out, or whatever. But if I have the money that I'm comfortable dedicating to both sets of hardware, then I'm leaning on both consoles for my gaming hobby, and neither one is, they're both being worn out at half the speed that I would normally wear out a console if I'm using them about equally, which is, I think, what I will probably end up doing. I am going to start, my plans are to start by buying a PlayStation 5, and the reason for that is to get upgrades for my current games, which I think will be nice. I've never before have there been consoles that have provided the kinds of upgrades, especially with the SSD that both consoles will have, that will improve things like texture pop-in and load times. I'm playing No Man's Sky, I'm playing Ghost Recon Breakpoint, really enjoy both of those games, but I would enjoy seeing less pop-in if at all possible. I would enjoy the load times, especially in No Man's Sky, warping from one system to the next to be released if that's a possibility. So since I would be getting one anyway in the spring, probably to play Far Cry 6 on, so I can just kind of enjoy the upgrades there. I'm going to be trying to get one before Christmas if possible. I missed out on the pre-orders, and I probably will on the next round of pre-orders that comes up, but I'm hopeful that between now and Christmas that they'll get that sorted out, and you'll be able to get one at retailers. That just would make a ton of sense for the holiday season coming up. So, and the reason specifically, and I'm going to hush my voice just a little bit here, the reason specifically that I would like to get a PlayStation 5 before Christmas is I'm hoping to surprise my boys by handing down to them my PlayStation 4. Once I get a PlayStation 5, I'm going to confirm that all the games that I'll want to be playing do work through backwards compatibility. They've said 99% of the games will, so I'll confirm that. And I'm also in a couple of months, with the money that I've been saving, going to be getting just a slight upgrade to the TV in my office. I've been playing on a 20 less than 20-inch screen, maybe an 18-inch HD TV, and I'd like to get a 4K one to take advantage of the new consoles coming up, and those are pretty inexpensive. You can get one for less than $300 or even a couple $100. So I'll be then able to move my PlayStation 4 and the TV that I'd been using, or I've got another one too that I might move out to the boys for this loft area that we have upstairs, to put some of their consoles up there, and then have some of the more adult consoles that I want to transition them to. Like, they already have an Xbox 360 out there, but a PlayStation 4 as well down in the main TV room, so we can better supervise some of the more adult-oriented games as they head into that. My oldest son is a 13-year-old now, and so that's kind of like where he's going to be heading. And so anyway, I really want, personally, as a dad, for him to be acquainted with not just Xbox 360, but also PlayStation 4. He's really into Switch right now, but bummed out at some of the controller drift he's experiencing. And his funds are limited, and so Nintendo notoriously does not decrease the prices of their games, and even used their games retain a lot of their market value, and so it's just a more expensive and limiting hobby. And so I'd like to help him get access to some other options so he can use his finances more effectively, and maybe have some other options so he doesn't feel quite as limited. Anyway, that's just me as a dad. I think I just kind of want him. I was like, oh, there's other things. There's so much more than Nintendo has to offer. I don't want to take Nintendo away from him, but I just want to introduce him to a world of all kinds of different games that can be acquired for much less money, especially on the used market or with sales and stuff like that. So anyway, that's my hope for Christmas. So between that and then also kind of the nice upgrade to my current games in the meantime, I am looking to get a PlayStation 5 sometime between release and Christmas. I suspect, now I can get a little bit louder, I suspect that in the second half of 2021 is when I will likely purchase an Xbox. I can imagine that being timed with a Starfield announcement. If Starfield is going to come in the fall of 2021, it clearly doesn't seem to be coming this year, and maybe it won't even be coming next year. Maybe we're looking at 2022. So maybe I won't get an Xbox One in 2021. I don't know, but I suspect that there'll be some kind of an announcement, some feature, something that will say to me, okay, let's go ahead and get the Xbox Series X. I said Xbox One, didn't I? The Xbox Series X sometime in 2021. But, neither console has any exclusives for now. So there's no rush. And I mean, for either console, as exciting as some of this news has been, I've really had to remind myself, okay, there's no real immediate urge that you should be feeling to get these consoles. What you're excited about is the possibilities of what's coming up in the future. But anyway, I'll get back to the subject of hype in just a little bit. If I had to choose one, let's say I hadn't been saving as diligently over the last handful of years, and I had to choose one, and I would surprisingly to myself to say this, choose an Xbox Series X. That's shocking to me given my history with the Xbox 360 and how many I saw die and fail, and just the support, the lack of support that I got from Xbox when looking to get those replaced. And there's a whole story there. I don't need to go into all that again. But anyway, I just had such a bad experience with the hardware of the 360 that I had told myself at one point, I'm not going to buy, certainly not new, Xbox hardware ever again. Well, I ended up breaking that vow when I bought the final version of the Xbox 360 that had all the kinks worked out of it. And so I'm still happy with that purchase. But yeah, all the changes I talked about this in my video last week. All the changes that Xbox has made have really made a difference in how that company is run. It's made a big difference in my perception of them and my confidence of them in the future. And certainly the choices they've made, starting with the purchase of In Exile, then Obsidian. That was very significant to me when they bought Obsidian. And now this move with Bethesda. Now, it's not going to be exclusive, but at the same time, these games are like my favorite types of video games, period. Other games that I enjoy, I basically enjoy in proportion to how much they do similar things as these Bethesda and Obsidian games. So, Sony was the best for me this... Well, let me first comment. If I had to choose Xbox, yes, Xbox Series X, but I would also wait until there's actually something exclusive, not something that merely could be improved upon by getting a current system, but something that is exclusive. I think if my finances were limited, and so. So I would just want to say that if that's kind of the situation you're in and you're comparing my thoughts to your own, that's where I would fall. Anyway. So as far as this generation, Sony was the best choice for me. I still believe that. Not by a ton, though. As I look back at all the exclusives that I enjoyed, the Japanese exclusives that just by default were only available on the PlayStation, the Sony exclusives that were actually first party and so were only on the PlayStation 4, have largely missed for me. Most of them that others have been excited about, Uncharted stuff, Last of Us games, God of War, Ghost of Tsushima, these are not my kinds of games. It's not that I think that they're poorly made at all. Clearly, they're very well made, but they are not my kind of game for various reasons that I don't need to go into. Horizon Zero Dawn, I really enjoyed. Dragon Quest Builders 1. These are games I really enjoyed, but I don't gush over them like so many third-party alternatives that scratch very similar itches and do so more effectively for me. Sony also has been making moves like the top dog that they are right now, like a company that is not feeling the need to compete. That's at least the impression that I get. I'm extremely disappointed with their lack of commitment to backwards compatibility, especially disappointed given their rich legacy going back to the PlayStation 1 and how it doesn't seem like it would be that complicated to put an emulator on there that would allow people to play games that the PlayStation TV could play or that the Vita could play. I mean, it just doesn't seem like it should be that big of a deal. And they would have access then to all kinds of new sales from PS5 owners who are like, really, I can buy these old PlayStation 1 games and play them? I'll do that. I'll re-buy this game. I'll re-buy this game, I'm sure that they've crunched the numbers and it doesn't make as much sense to me as I make it sound, but it's because of my perception that I'm just left thinking, yeah, they're not going to... If they're not giving me backwards compatibility now on those systems, then I don't have any reason to think that they will. It's been rumored on and off over the years that maybe it was going to be coming as a new feature to the PS4. Maybe it's going to come to the PS5. And every time we just saw, nope, guess not, nope, guess not, nope, guess not. Meanwhile, Xbox has been trumpeting from the rooftops their prioritization of backwards compatibility. And yes, it's been limited, but it's been far, far more than we've seen from Sony. And also I think on top of the backwards compatibility and the exclusives that fall short of my preferences compared to the third-party offerings, letting Microsoft nab the Western RPG market with In Exile, with Obsidian, it just says to me that they are not... even if all those games come to PlayStation 5, it says to me that they are not really prioritizing that market of games and really kind of fulfilling a need for, or a desire, I should say, for those kinds of games for customers. It's just not a priority for them. Maybe it'll pay off. Maybe they'll make some great purchase. Like one suggestion I heard the other day was that, boy, they should buy Konami right now. Well, that would be cool. I would be glad to have a new PlayStation for the sake of Castlevania Symphony of the Night-like games that might come out, but that's about it. So that they just letting Microsoft do that just says to me, I don't think I can count on them to really be prioritizing the same things that I want to prioritize as a gamer. And then generally, they're just sounding, and have been for a while, more corporate, less transparent, and less consumer friendly. Now, I'm not making judgments about them as people, them as a corporate entity behind the scenes and how they're operating behind the scenes. This is all perception, you know. So there may be a bunch of like greedy, evil jerks over at Microsoft compared to the people at Sony, but it's the way that they're coming across that I'm basing my decision off of. That's all I have to go on, you know. So it's a reversal here between these two companies, Xbox and Sony, and that I think we could see coming over the years as Xbox began turning things around and as Sony dominated the market so much. And it may be that by the dawn of PlayStation 6 and Xbox, whatever it will be, we'll see a reversal again, you know, as Xbox maybe by then will have ushered in this horrific age of zero game ownership and forced reliance on subscription services like Game Pass. I mean, that could be the dark future that we one day face. Who knows? But for now, Xbox is the company that's making the most moves that appeal to my interests and priorities, and I have reason to believe that they will continue making the choices that will most appeal to me for at least half or more of this upcoming console generation. I've been enjoying their choices so much that I'm having to fight off hype at this point. And so I wanted to talk about that a bit, just from a Christian perspective, and how I'm navigating my excitement over some of this news and some of my thought processing about these new consoles and the idea of owning one or both of them in the coming months. You know, at this point, I'm dreaming about the future of Obsidian and Bethesda RPGs, and even though it's far off, I'm feeling almost like I could somehow make it more real, make it more present, bring it on more quickly if I get a new Xbox now, or if I get a new PlayStation, like if I try to pre-order a PS5 as soon as I can, you know, the thoughts of my PS4 games improving in some way, I want that now, you know, and so pre-ordering it maybe will make it in some way feel more present, feel more real. But, you know, we're going to be waiting, even if you manage to get a pre-order, you're going to be waiting until mid-November, even if you've secured that pre-order. And I think it's very likely that once the launch day comes, that maybe we'll see a couple weeks where, bam, they just disappeared because of the hardcore people that were there sleeping in lines overnight. But I think between launch and Christmas, they're going to get more in stock. You're not going to be waiting that long. I think it's unlikely. Now, I haven't been analyzing the business with console launches, but that's just my impression, you know, of what I vaguely remember of past console launches, that, you know, there's going to be some there more. They're going to prioritize getting them there for Black Friday and stuff. So, you know, right now, and the hype that I'm feeling now shouldn't be influencing my decisions. And I'm trying to catch myself as I experience these moments of excitement and hype and say, okay, freeze for a second. Step outside of yourself for a second. What is this? What is this you're feeling? What is hype itself? Well, it's excitement for something good that you believe is likely coming. And then I have to think for a second, in light of that, where is my hype for God's eternal kingdom? I'm not the excitement for that is not as mentally present in my life, and I think it's largely because I don't think about it as much. It doesn't seem as real and as present as some of these other promises and things that are being made by others. And I think a large part of that is because I fail to imagine heaven, God's eternal kingdom, in light of God's goodness right now. I fail to assign credit to God for all of the good things that I enjoy right now, despite, you know, even though that there are people involved in creating so many of the things that I enjoy right now, that my family members are a source of joy for me right now, that food and other things that people have made are sources of joy for me right now. God is the source of all of those things. He creates the capacity and the circumstances that people can have to create all of these things that I enjoy. And so I want to become more disciplined in making a mental connection, a ready mental connection between things that I enjoy that I do not normally associate with God and God's character and his love for me. I want to get good at seeing that all good is from God, and I want that to lead me to thanking him for all those things peppered throughout the day, being in a continual mode of like thanking him peppered throughout the day, and developing, I think as a result, a more substantial anticipation of my eternal hope in God's eternal kingdom. Psalm 16, as some of you guys know, has been like the go-to psalm for me for months and months now, as I've been processing all kinds of different things in life. I don't want to say chief among those. Well, for a while, chief among those was my own mortality, and just kind of getting into my early 40s and processing those things in a new way. But as I have meditated on this psalm, I've seen how much it applies to so many areas of my life, specifically as a geek, as someone who loves imaginative entertainment and consuming entertainment and stuff. And I specifically, I come to this psalm, and I can apply it in different ways to different circumstances, different things I'm thinking about every day. I'm not bored of this. I come back to it every day. And so today, as I look at this, I'll just actually start in verse 2 of Psalm 16. In the ESV, it says, I say to Yahweh, you are my Lord, or my Adonai. I have no good apart from you. I think just reflecting on that alone, I have no good. There's not a single good I can think of that does not find its source in God, in how he made me, how he made someone else, how he made the world, and how the world operates. I have no good apart from you. And then the next verse is something important for me any day to remember. As for the saints in the land, they are the excellent ones, in whom is all my delight. Am I really taking delight? Am I really valuing other believers that would be saints, set apart ones, people who are pursuing life with God? I mean, certainly there are Christians that get on my nerves, but this is specifically talking about those among God's people who are pursuing to be conformed to his will and to live in the purpose that he has for them. I'll tell you what, those people, those Christians, I love spending time with. They are a delight to me. And so this is a reminder to me, as much as I get excited about all the things that are good that I have because of God, to remember the value of other believers and spending time with other believers, and thinking to myself, okay, have I scheduled that next get-together with my discipleship buddy? Have I scheduled my next get-together with my mentor and stuff? And thinking about those kinds of things, that's been great for me to touch on every day. And then verse 4, the sorrows of those who run after another god shall multiply. Their drink offerings of blood I will not pour out, or take their names on my lips. And of course, we don't really have this phenomenon going on today, but the principle that still applies in terms of worshiping gods is just the philosophies, the values of the world that can consume us and become a priority over and above God and what he intends for us. And I think hype that is divorced from God's goodness and a recognition of his goodness is creating this idol, is creating this false thing that we are pursuing, this worship. Essentially, worship is just this intense prioritization of something. And so when we get hyped and we leave God out of the equation, then we are worshiping, in a sense. We are worshiping this thing, or this idea, or this, whatever it is that's apart from God. And so the psalmist says, their drink offerings of blood I will not pour out. So he's not going to be a part of the actual things that are involved in that form of worship, or take their names on my lips. So he's like, there's even a lighter level of involvement that he's like, I'm not even going to do this. And so that really gives me reason to pause and think about, okay, what elements of this whole hype culture do I want to just step back from right now and say, no, Peter, you're not going to do that. You're not going to order your life around this hype. You are going to rein yourself in, and you're going to allow truth and what is important in life to guide your decision making, your purchasing, all those kinds of things. And then the reflection that he makes in verse 5 is, Yahweh is my chosen portion and my cup. You hold my lot, he says. The lines have fallen for me in pleasant places. Indeed, I have a beautiful inheritance. And so he's reflecting in that moment about how God ultimately is the greatest thing that he has, the greatest relationship that he has, because God is the source of all of these good things, and God will be the source of things that we can't even fathom yet right now. And so just reflecting on God and making the observation that God is the source of all these good things is an important reset in his mind for the psalmist, and an important reset for me. And just two more verses that I'll read here, 7 and 8. I bless Yahweh who gives me counsel. In the night also my heart instructs me. And in the night when I'm lying in bed, those are sometimes when my emotions and thoughts can be most vulnerable to all kinds of random things that will pop into my head. But I have found it to be the case that the more I value God's counsel during the day, as I'm processing life, as I'm specifically in his word, the more I see that my heart at night does properly instruct me, because my heart has been informed by his word throughout the day. And that's a reason to bless Yahweh for giving me counsel, for keeping me out of so many problems in life. Verse 8, he says, I have set Yahweh always before me. Because he is at my right hand, I shall not be shaken. And that is just such a call upward and a challenge for me to keep him ever in my thoughts in terms of how his word is influencing my view of my life, of my circumstances, and of the things that I am pursuing and prioritizing. The more that he is present and being allowed to shape my life, the less shaken I am by various circumstances. Hype culture is about these big ups that then end up becoming very often catastrophic downs as people are let down after the hype. You think of situations like the No Man's Sky release, and I mean, there's all kinds of it. You can go to all kinds of geek culture to think about hype, and then it does not deliver. And what does that turn into? It turns into this real low of anger, of frustration, of letdown and disappointment. But when we are learning contentment and thanking God for all that we already have, all that he's already done, and learning contentment in that, then we get to experience those little bumps upward of, oh, wow, this is a cool thing. I didn't have my hopes and my heart set on this, but it's just a bonus of what I was already content to have in my life. So we get to experience those bumps up in enjoyment of things in life without near as much of the downs, the frustration, the anger, the disappointment, the disenchantment, the bitterness, all those things that come so often after in just a different stage of the hype cycle. And that's the kind of life I want to live, not just in terms of hype, but in terms of when really difficult things are happening in life. I want to be unshaken. And the way to be unshaken in life, the psalmist says here, is to have Yahweh always set before us. And so anyway, that's thanking God for what we have, develops contentment, keeps us from unwisely pulling the trigger on purchases that aren't the best use of our allotted entertainment funds. Specifically in the case of these consoles, you could see revisions to the hardware that will make them improved or more reliable in some way 6 months or 9 months after their release. Sometimes in that same amount of time, or maybe a little bit longer, you can see a reduction in price, or maybe they're just a little bit more likely to be on sale at certain retailers. And so waiting can really make a good difference in the use of our finances. And contentment combined with wise saving and spending of money keeps us from disappointment, from anger, when things we buy fail to meet our expectations in some way. Seeing God's goodness in all that we enjoy, thanking Him for it continually along the way, throughout our day, moment to moment, just results in a better, more satisfying life and a more purposeful and fulfilling life too. So that is what I am at least aiming for right now, even as some of this news has been interesting and exciting to think about. I hope something in all that has been useful to you. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye. It is time for Extra Life again, and I'd love for you to be a part of it with me. Here's a recycled but slightly modified promo to tell you more. Once again this year, Christian Geek Central is participating in Extra Life. This is a charity that raises funds for the Children's Miracle Network of Hospitals, which provides free medical care to children whose families could otherwise not afford it. And this is very often for critical, life-saving treatment. Joining our team only requires a willingness to ask your family and friends to consider donating toward your fundraising efforts. Participants also usually do something fun and game-related to draw attention to their fundraising efforts, like a special game night at your home or your church, or like me, you could do a crazy 24-hour video gaming marathon. Now, I'm theming it around video games, but really this event can be themed around any kind of gaming, which includes both video games and tabletop games of any kind. What you do to raise funds is entirely up to you, but I would love for you to consider joining the Christian Geek Central Extra Life team. As team leader, I'll be there to help answer your questions, provide some helpful tips if I can, and just in general be your fundraising cheerleader and try to draw attention myself to your fundraising efforts. You can get more information about the event as a whole at extra-life.org, and if you choose to sign up there, be sure to select Christian Geek Central as your team so I can get in touch with you and then just help in whatever way I can. Fundraising can begin at any time, but our main push is going to be through the month of October leading up to November 7th. That's the annual Extra Life Game Day, when I'll be streaming my 24-hour video gaming marathon live and trying to stay awake without throwing up. More details on my live stream as we get closer to it. That's it for now. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.